Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In my boredom yesterday, I decided to watch this movie called Dune. Now I didn't know anything about the movie before I actually watched it. I know it's based on a book, but I'm never going to read those books because I don't care that much. However, when I was watching that movie, I noticed that there were so many things from the Prophet Muhammad's story. After I watched the movie, I tried to find videos of people talking about this or just text on the internet. I couldn't find anything, so I'm just going to share with you what are the similarities that I noticed. Now, this list is sort of like in the order that they appear in the movie. Now, the first thing I noticed was the ring that they were using to sign pledges and contracts. And this is what the prophet used to do. He had a ring. He was illiterate, so he didn't write his name. He used to have the prophet's seal on that ring, and he would use that to sign. And they did that in the movie. Now, what they used to do during the prophet's time is that every time the prophet had to send something and he had to sign it, they would make a new ring for him. And then he would use that to sign. And that ring used to say, Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad is the prophet of Allah. Now the second thing is the dreams and visions that the main character has, and there were many similarities to the way the prophet described his visions. The way he received the Quran, and this movie uses the same things. For example, it's sort of like a hallucinations the way he sees things. And then there are certain phrases and poetry that somebody is reciting to him. And they are just sort of phrases. Every time he sort of has a vision, he receives a couple lines. And that's how revelation used to be revealed to the prophet. And because it comes down in this way, slowly, line by line in a sense, that you don't know what the full message is. Now the third thing that was similar was the first time character actually receives a proper vision, and it happens in Dune, and the first thing he sees is this woman standing in a desert filling the screen. The camera is so close that you can pretty much just see her. That is what the prophet saw. The first time, he ran from the cave, he saw Jibril, the angel, filling the horizon. He could only see him, and so I think that was also quite similar. Now the fourth thing is a direct reference. You cannot argue with this, because there's a scene when he sees these holy palm trees. And in the movie, there's this guy, this gardener, he goes to him and he asks him about the trees, and the guy tells him these are holy trees. And then there are people sitting next to the tree, and he asks him, who are these people? And he tells them that these people, they are waiting for the prophet, for the Messiah, and they are sitting here. And then he is told that they come here every morning and then they leave at night. Now that's exactly what happened in Medina. Now in the story of the prophet, there was this Jewish man who used to work at the edge of the city. And the people used to come there, and he would ask them, what are you doing here? And they would tell him, we're waiting for the prophet. Now the day when the prophet arrived, the people had already left. So he called them back and he was like, the person you've been waiting is here. So just like in this movie, the people in the Medina used to come every morning, and then they would leave at night. And the first time they see the prophet is standing under a tree. And when they meet him, he's standing on a tree. And this guy, he was clearly playing the Messiah, he is standing in front of the tree when these people, his followers, finally see him. Now at this point is where the hijrah starts. Him and his mother, the main character and his mother, who is clearly Abu Bakr and the prophet's first wife combined in this movie. Well, they leave at night. The main character tells his mother, we will leave at night, and then they walk through a desert. Now in the prophet's story, that is exactly what happened. Prophet told Abu Bakr that they will leave at night, and then at night time they went through the desert because people would follow them. They also tried to assassinate the main character just before the hijrah, just like in the prophet's story. However, the main similarity when it comes to hijrah is, of course, they took the story of the spider. Now the way they did it in this movie is that when they are walking through a desert, they finally find this one place, and they have this rocky heavy tent. And he goes in there with his mother, and then because it's so windy, it's covered by the desert. So they are sort of like in a cave. Now he's there with his mother, and of course in the Prophet's story, he was in a cave with Abu Bakr when they were hiding for the people who were following them. That's what they were doing in this movie. Now, when they get out of the cave from this movie, they see a mouse. Now, in the Prophet's case, when Prophet got out of the cave, there was this spider there that did the web, and there was also a bird that laid an egg. Now, in this case, there's this mouse, and we already saw this mouse earlier before, so this is like a, imaginary mouse, I guess, or I don't know, like it's in the middle of a desert. I don't think that it should be there. But it's just like as soon as they get out of the cave, they see this animal, and it's sort of a sign from God, that God was there with them. There's even ayah in the Quran, when there were two of them there, Allah was the third one. So it's a very important scene in the movie, and it's also an important scene in like the Prophet's life. It's a very important moment, and I think they copied it from that. There were also other little similarities that I saw. Now these are just speculation. Now the main power that the main character has and his mother have is the word, the spoken word. They have this thing is that every time you say something with certain voice, people will be forced to do what you tell them to do. Now that's exactly what the Prophet had. His main miracle was the word, Quran. And there's stories of the Prophet, there were moments in Mecca when people were prosecuting him. He used to read the Quran. He used to read this ayah that told to do the sujood, do the prostration, going down and, putting your head on the ground. And there's this ayah, in the Quran that tells everybody who reads that ayah to do the prostrations to God. So he read that out loud, and everybody around him, they did the prostration. They all went down, even though they weren't Muslims. And there's many stories like this, Every time he used to read the Quran, people used to become Muslims. Miracles would happen. People used to do what he wanted. So the power of the word, the power of the Quran is very important. Just like the power of the word is important in this movie. Also, when there's this moment where his mother takes him to this one woman to see if he really is the one, or if what he's saying is sort of from God. Now, that's exactly what happened in the Prophet's life. When he told his wife, Khadija, about his, visions, just like the character tells his mother about them, and then his mother calls this woman, and Prophet's wife took him to certain person who knew about, Judaism and Christianity and God, so he would sort of like answer his questions, like if this is the one or whatever, because they didn't know what was happening. So that's very similar, and they had like this way of recognizing if this guy is a good guy or a bad guy. Also in the end, when he meets his future companions, they are ragtag sort of group in the middle of a desert who've been fighting for a long time. It's exactly like the people in Medina, they were at war for a long time, and they were many of them. It was also very interesting, in the end of the movie, they made this pledge that he will be with them for the rest of his life. And that's exactly what the Prophet agreed the first time he met them. They told him, if you come to Medina, we want you to be there for the rest of your life, and we want you to never leave us. And the Prophet agreed to those terms. And in this movie, they also tell him, you are one of us and you can never leave. You will be with us for the rest of your life. It's a very similar situation. And then the end of the movie, he sees this city, and he's very happy that he finally is ready, and he sees, what he calls sand power, which sounded very racist to me for some apparent reason. It was very similar to the first time, Prophet arrived in the city of Munawwara, the city of light, Medina. Now, I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please remember to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you very much.